This is a super unrehearsed discussion of something that just came to mind today, given the conversation in the patron chat at Discord. And so I thought to myself, all right, let's do a little OSR. Let's honor the ideals a bit, and of the as I perceive, the honorable ideals of all those things stated, many of which are silly, but there's some honorable ideals in there. So let's do that. And so let's take a look. And the first thing that I would say, where is my position in this? Where would I go with that? First things first, I expectorate upon discussions of anything following 1996 or so as old school. I could be really cranky and say, anything before 1983, I'll call old school. But, I know that that's going crazy as far as a lot of the people involved in the hobby are concerned. But listen, let's just say that for me, the Wizards of the Coast purchase, neither a bad thing nor a good thing, is a good solid temporal cutoff for me. So looking back on all this, and I say, all right, now what are the, where's my love for D&D, if any, in any of this? And I think it's clear from the previous presentations I've made. It's Holmes. It's 1977, Dungeons and Dragons, the first widely commercially available version of the game, and in many cases, unfortunately, often the culturally left behind version, very swiftly eclipsed by the Moldvay set in 1980, 81-ish, and 81, I think, and that's its own story. But anyway, so there's the Holmes box, and I say, all right, there's my baby. I'm not the first. Blue Home is, I don't know if it's a retro clone or not, whatever that means. But Blue Home is, inspired by it, and I think there are some others. So, all right, so there I am, with Holmes, and saying, what shall I do with this? And several things come to mind. First, I'm okay with extending its levels past 1, 2, and 3. I'm not being a real purist about this, so I'm not doing a retro clone. I'm saying I want to do something with this. I want to be, I want to celebrate this thing. And one thing I'll do is go ahead and extend leveling up a little bit further. So I would have to make some stuff up for that. Second, I'm reaching around in my mind and thinking, what else about D&D at that moment, very late 70s for me, do I want to celebrate? And I see something in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, which came out effectively simultaneously and just after Holmes. And so the first blush of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons and the adoption and play of the Holmes set are occurring simultaneously across the hobby. They certainly were for me. And I know that's the case for a lot of other people. They were absolutely contemporary. So looking at that and saying there's something about Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, that first batch, that I liked, and I just think went south for a lot of people in play, and also its avoidance, right, has actually marked a fair amount of D&D-ness in many groups and design communities ever since. And it is specifically that intra-party conflict is actually ramped up. It's brought into play as a feature. It is impossible to imagine that anybody reflecting upon the design of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons at that time as would fail to perceive it as a vehicle for intra-party conflict. Now, you could say, well, that's just bad design, or, they made a mistake, they went the wrong way with that, or whatever. You can, but I don't think so. I think that we look at it and say, all right, what do we see there with its bunch of character classes? Well, we'll start with the races. We've got humans, elves, dwarves, half-elves, we've got gnomes, we got the halfling, and we got the half-orc. few interesting points about that. Some of the races have alignment specifications. Half-orcs are not nice in that regard. So just bearing that in mind. And so then we go over to the classes, and we've got several sort of fundamental classes. We've got fighter, magic user, cleric, and thief. And then you have subclasses, which I guess you could think of the fighter as a subclass of fighter as well. So you could be just a fighter. So within fighter, you've got, stick with just fighter. Then you've got the ranger. And then over in the cleric, you've got, and then within fighter, you've got paladin as well. Okay, good. Then over in cleric, you've got subclasses and like the druid. And then over in magic user, you have the subclass of illusionist. So you can either be like a straight up magic user, or you could be an illusionist. Same thing with a cleric. You're a cleric or you're a druid. Over in fighter, you're a paladin, you're a ranger. Then over in the thief, you can be a thief, but then there's also the subclass of assassin. Bunch of stuff to keep in mind here. First of all, thieves get money from killing things and taking it, just like anyone else, but they also get money that they can steal. And that experience, and remember, money you get is also experience points. So if a thief steals, not only are they richer, but they get experience points for it. So let's say we all, kill a bunch of gnolls or something, and we, loot the bodies like good virtuous heroes do, and we distribute them across all of us equally. So we each get the experience points for killing the gnolls, and we get the experience points for the money that we have distributed equally among us. And then in the night, the thief goes and robs, 2 of the party members blind. And then the thief gets that amount of money as experience. He doesn't take the experience away from the others. He does take their money, and then he gets the money and experience points for that money. So that can happen. Thieves are, if I remember correctly in the rules, and given the weird 9-point alignment in that game, they have to be neutral. And neutral has its 3 sets, which is neutral, neutral good, and neutral evil. So the thief has to be one of those. So okay, you've got that. Then you have the paladin, who I believe is the most enjoined specified alignment of the bunch. He has to be lawful and good. There are no anti-paladins in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. There's no other these weird nuances you find later. No, lawful and good, and we're done. So then over in the assassin, they have to be evil. It can be lawful evil, neutral evil, or chaotic evil, but that's how it is. So there's a few other things. The ranger has to be good. The druid has to be neutral. And there's a few other things kicking around in there. But I think those are the main ones. So what you can see, too, is that the assassin gets money for professional kills. And that money that they get paid for killing the person, which includes the experience for killing that person, if it applies, that money becomes experience points for them as well. An important point about being a paladin is that not only are you lawful good, there's sort of a hot potato thrown to the player, which is just what are you going to put up with among your associates, because passive acceptance of their behavior is condoning it. So you're going to have to come up with what you think is, a proper way, and you're under the gun as far as the game master's assessment of lawful good is concerned. We won't go into the rules for what alignment and character behavior actually mean in that game, partly because it's going way too far down that road for purposes of this talk, and partly because everybody gets upset. Well, all I'm saying is that when you're looking across that panoply of classes and that set of alignments and a few of those other things, then clearly you're going to have all sorts of opportunities for player characters in application of those rules to be disagreeing with one another and getting in each other's faces about it. Now, we could bring in a few other things, killing helpless enemies. You're not supposed to do that. If more accurately, the good category in alignment doesn't include that behavior. So all of these things, right, are sort of laid out. Now, I should point out as well that for this game, there's no setting, there's no cultural notions of, what the characters should be up to. So that's really wishy-washy and was formed at the table. So all of this has to get kind of placed into that zone. There's one really important nuance of all of this. The paladin and the assassin are overpowered. And that turns into a feature. Because, I'll be blunt, you're making a party in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, you want a paladin and you want an assassin. They are badasses, and you, right out of the gate, first level, right? Rangers are also kind of badasses out of the gate. They get this insane number of hit points, for one thing. I think that's just because the game authors couldn't stand the idea of Aragorn getting killed, so they just kind of racked that guy up. But anyway, that aside, you've got these two just dripping with special abilities characters. You got some clerical abilities with plate mail. You've got, the insta-kill, possibility for the assassin, and, all sorts of stuff like that. You're like, we want them. Well, put them in the same party, and now you've got characterization, and now you've got different things that they get up to, and now they've got them in, you got them in each other's faces. And at a certain perspective, and accepting this rather than squealing about it and trying to dodge and duck and legalize and, basically whine about it. If you accept this can be a good thing. And I said, I'm keeping over there. A dungeon advanced. You got that thing? Here. Let's just pop that back over here in some fashion and stick it into the somewhat more stripped down, in fact, considerably more stripped down homes. So where does that put us? All right, I'm going to town on this. I'm taking out my red pen. I'm not even going to alter homes. I'm taking a blank sheet and going, okay, inspired and do. So it's that kind of OSR. Well, cool. Races. Half elves, half orcs, humans. Done. Excellent. Now elves and orcs are basically monster races. So many things. Just, it's like a big breath of fresh air just thinking of that. Okay, now we go over to the classes, and I kind of rub my nose a little bit, and I think, well, I'm thinking about those alignment-y things, and those different deals, and okay, gotcha. We can have paladins and assassins, and we should kind of keep the things that they're part of as separate classes, no subclasses here, so fighters and thieves. And in a minute, I found myself adding a ranger. I said, well, no, screw the cleric. We've got paladins. We want clerical stuff. That's going to be a subset of paladins. So we're just going to keep the paladin as kind of a weak cleric and keep that as clerical. And I scratched myself a little bit and said, oh, wait. Let's do something a little different. Let's say that real low-level prayers, there's going to be something that all characters can do. Religious, if they so choose, and they're going to call those just prayers. And then we've got the paladin, so his weak clericalness turns into kind of a big jump on those. So that's cool. All right, with that in mind, we got all the divinity taken care of. how we can go over to the magic. So I don't have any magic using classes in this right now. And I could. But again, let's make magic, an available resource that's out there that characters can kind of get their hands on and use, maybe know a little bit, and just have that there. And then that gives me the opportunity to take the half elves and say, and they're good at it. So they get like more of that. Cool. Half orcs need a thing now. They need a, they need a thing. What could that be? I don't know. Something. But looking across all the different options and ideas that I have about shaping this out into a playable game, they're going to get something. Then, and remember too, we're not talking about like the later half orcs of role playing. Okay? I'm not talking about those guys. I'm talking about the half orcs of the late 70s, and they look like people, and they're actually a little shorter than people, and they're kind of grubby, and some of them can't pass as people, and some of them can, and they're kind of shitty, kind of lowlifes. That's who I'm talking about. So the whole noble savage thing, and tribes of half orcs and stuff like that out there, looking over the horizons and being noble and stuff. No. Okay, so looking at this, what other things come to mind? I did talk about this whole alignment thing. And I said, you know what? Let's go to town with this alignment thing. Something that I notice is not necessarily emphasized in many games calling themselves OSR. And here I'm going to say, well, let's talk about it as a thespian thing. Basically your character talks about it a lot and, tries to accord with it. And let's talk about it as a genuine values thing, what each thing actually means. Now, Holmes doesn't do the lawful, neutral chaos juxtaposed with good, neutral, evil. It doesn't have a 9 by matrix. It's got a much simpler situation. So I'm going to keep it nice and simple. Although I do kind of like the idea of a juxtaposition. So anyway, I came to mind with... basically, and just for fun, right, I'm going to call them goodness and evilness. And then we can juxtapose that with selfless and selfish. And when the time comes, I'll write a paragraph, and it's all going to be completely orthogonal. So every combination is possible. Neutral, schmutual. There's 4 boxes. So this turned out real easy. And this is why I brought in the Ranger. You'll see why. Right. So I said, okay, so paladins they have to be selfless. They can be good or evil, but they have to be selfless. And of course, you just recognized I just sort of, expanded the range of paladins can be bad guys now. Okay, good. So, but they have to be selfless. Whatever that paragraph says, that's their thing. All right, then the thief, we're going to stick with selfish, which actually is pretty much a port from AD&D. Selfish, so they can be good or bad, but they're, these kind of selfish sorts. All about me. And then you go over to the assassin, and obviously we've got to be an evilness, so they can be selfish or selfless, but evilness. And then, so I was looking at this, and at this point, that's all I had. And I was going, this is looking pretty good. And it's really, honoring the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons matrix with the addition of expanding, into what the game did in the 80s anyway, which was to, sort of evil up the paladin side of things if you wanted. So, what I was looking at, just purely out of symmetry, it's asymmetrical, and there's nobody who has to be into goodness, selfish or selfless. And I looked at the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and there was that fucking Ranger grinning back at me going, that's me. And I was like, we have to have those bastards, don't we? Well, you're not getting extra hit points, I can tell you that much. And so in I pull the Ranger, and then we see, that we've got all the different 2As set up there in a nice little no diagonals either. So that's cool. So I'm liking that little matrix and saying, okay, that's our baby. all set up for that feature that I was talking about, with the simplicity of Holmes and with, coherent paragraphs. That'll work nice. Few other things that opens up for questions. But one thing that then occurred to me is, am I going to have, race-based limits on which class? And I sweated over it, because the later stages, which say anybody with anything, is fine, but very non-old school as far as I'm concerned. My old school says this can be a that, and that can be a this, and then this can be half of that and half of that, but they can't be this. So I said, all right, well, let's not go nuts with this the way they did. Let's be sensible. Fine. Paladins have to be human. Half elves and half orcs can be, any of the others, but they can't be a paladin. And a human can be a paladin as well as any of the others. Now I'm looking at this and going, I think I got my structure. I think I've got my old school structure here. And then it came to mind, money as part of that, tension now has to be involved. We're going back to these old days. So experience points are, coming in with the cash as well as with anything else you do. And so I'm going, all right, well, this actually kind of comes to mind. What if we had some kind of player proactive thing where you are going to get experience if you, as the player, say, well, my paladin guy has this holy mission that he's up to, and the assassin guy can say, well, I've got my contract. There's a dude I got to kill. And the thief knows about, something that they want to get, or is somehow, in an opportunity of learning about it, or whatever it may be. And then the ranger, I'm not sure, but something important that a ranger can get up to and be proactive about. It's optional. The player can take on this as part of what their character is doing, and it will have its own, hefty. In fact, I even have my notion about that. For everything else, leveling up is going to be the same. You get a certain amount for a defeated foe, and you get it equal to the money that you collect by hook or by crook. And that actually becomes kind of cool, because the idea of selfless includes the part about not taking, not basically getting money for it. So if you're, selfless, then it's actually going, against your alignment to, get paid, to collect money. I mean, you can give it away, but you can't, keep it and have it and spend it on stuff you want. So that's kind of cool. I'll talk more about that in a minute and how that can be functional in play. So then, you get experience points that way, and you can level up that way. But if you do the thing that you had proactively gone for, you get a level bump, like a whole level bump. Wow. You just sort of add what it takes to get, to the next level right there. And then whatever else experience points you've accumulated now is, banked into the next level. It's like, ooh, that's hefty. But it's kind of cool, because it means that the paladin or a selfless assassin or a selfless ranger could, easily, level up just by sticking on task. They don't have to count their pennies in as much as the other characters do. So kind of like that. That's working. So with all that in mind, we've got a pretty good arrangement. And more comes to mind after that. Then I start thinking about, with this potentially swift accumulation of levels, is there something to do with, cutting out and saying, okay, the character's done? Maybe so. Maybe there's just a top level where at that point you're done. Your character's retired. Who knows? Thoughts about that? So I'm kind of putting this together. Now, most of the other stuff about Holmes as procedure is pretty playable. I personally think that the ordering during combat is really freaking quirky and may or may not remain as a way to do it. It may be better actually to give, a rolled range of sort of more sensible and specific rolled range per creature of what their dexterity is. And then that way they can vary a little bit, but won't be, you're not going to get your red dragon with a dexterity of 3 or stuff like that. So anyway, kind of thinking about how to work with a few of the things, and magic in and of itself starts to become kind of interesting because it's now not a character class thing. It's sort of an activity thing that you can get involved with. And so sort of preserving the way that magic works, either as memorization or as scrolls and stuff, preserving that basic structure and how it relates to leveling up, and thinking about it. Well, I started thinking, those distinctions of magic. I definitely know that, nasty necromancy and alchemy, sort of the gleamer thing, and what the hell, we can't do without it, all the flashbang, fire and lightning, and snow and stuff like that, that kind of stuff. Those sort of, divisions of magic as a category, but not being too hung up on like belonging to one of them. But maybe non-player characters would, the people who really study this stuff, the weird little frail, scholarly people who actually, work out the magic and stuff like that. Those people, could be highly specialized into those. That makes sense. So those are some of my thoughts, and gives you an idea of what aspects of regard for the history and that particular body of games could lead a person, to do, without falling into this whole fetishy and worshipful notion of where I think the designation of OSR has gone.